Look me up on Google, search the classics, you crazy bastard. Hold me up and pull me down. It's a battle royale in the eye of the storm. Drowning in the shallows when the path is getting narrow. I'ma ride it out on this broken arrow. Fuck it. Hold me up.
Welcome to Unfiltered Idiots,
where we chat shit about real shit,
talk shit about those not giving a shit,
wondering and complaining why they ain't got shit. All right, here we are, ladies and gents, back with another episode. First and foremost, we'll introduce ourselves. Kenny.
What's up, guys? My name is Kenny, born and raised in Aurora, Colorado. Have a couple of children and currently work in the property management field.
My name is Wes, a.k.a. Metro. Also from Southeast Aurora, also with 2 kiddos. And I'm a personal trainer. And yeah, man.
And a grandfather.
Yes. I have a little grandson, little baby Callan, little G Money. I call him little GC Money.
Yes, sir.
But yeah, so on today's episode, we want to talk about everything's going on with Kanji. I said that right? Yeah. Katanji. Fuck. I said it. I fucked up again.
Judge Brown Jackson.
We were literally Katanji, Jesus. So we want to talk about, Judge Katanji. Yeah. My brain was like, we were just talking about fucking Tucker and all these morons.
Yeah.
And how they deliberately like mispronounce like Kamala, and all that. Kamala, like they do it on purpose.
Yeah.
He went to Trinity. Y'all should probably know that. I said that on one of my videos recently that I'll be posting as well. But
yeah.
He went to,
1 second though.
Yeah.
1 second. We want to talk about Metro. Is doing what is it called? Unfiltered Metro?
Yeah,
Unfiltered Metro.
Yeah.
So Metro will be dropping a couple videos. I've dropped a couple myself.
Yes, Unfiltered Kenny.
So yeah, we're just gonna keep the content going, but obviously we'll come together.
Keep it trucking. But yeah, so we were making fun of, and then of course like my brain was all in there going like fuck, because we were saying,
because I was like, don't do it.
We were saying all the ways that they deliberately say Kamala incorrectly on purpose, but Katanji. Brown Jackson, and just the again wearing it on their sleeves, hypocrisy.
The hypocrisy of all hypocrisies.
Just like literally like asking questions like obviously Josh is dumbass and like asking questions that about whether or not she the one of her cases that she had was a 18-year-old guy, but he had some stuff on his computers, this is that, on his phones that was looked at as being possible child porn. Whatever. I don't know the whole subject.
Yeah.
I didn't look at the case. Neither did.
Hold on though.
Did Josh's dumbass.
Yeah, like Josh didn't either. Yeah. He did not. It was a talking point, right?
Yeah,
it was like his assistant did some quick research on a case, and and he wasn't even the worst one. It was like freaking Ted Cruz and
Lindsey Graham.
And I think we should we put these videos in here too? Little clips.
Yeah, we'll put some clips in here for you. Yeah.
Okay. But if anyways, like it was just the hypocrisy of the 3 people speaking, and they had no issues with January 6th. They had no issues with the way the president spoke. A couple years ago.
They're questioning her about whether or not this still young person. I understand people are like, oh, they're 18. Okay, let's not act like an 18-year-old
is not. It doesn't
45-year-old who just all of a sudden got his head straight.
Yeah,
that's not how the teenage brain works. And for any of those who don't understand that, you probably should go do some fucking research. Number one, you can also just
go back to when you were 18,
or just go back and look at Netflix under Explained. Explained is a great documentary on Netflix. One of them literally on Explained the Mind, because they have kind of subset of Explained. They do like their general stuff where they'll talk about sometimes even like the fashion industry, but then they have one on specifically on just the mind, and one of them is literally called the teenage brain. So if you got 25 minutes instead of watching garbage like you probably mostly do, go watch stuff that actually is going to enlighten your brain, instead of watching somebody like Ucker Harl like say the wrong things, or Sheen Hainataiti say the wrong things all damn day long, because that's literally what they'll go and do. And it's like you'll spend hours watching garbage, not understanding that these same clowns, Yash Hawley,
there was just so much more context
literally didn't want us
to
bring up This is not a judge who is accused of sexual assault.
Right.
Kind of like one that just happened a few years ago.
Brett Kavanaugh?
That there was tons of documentation that he committed this crime.
Brett Kavanaugh.
She took a polygraph given to her by an 11-year veteran of the CIA who said she got a +6 on the polygraph. This is Dr. Ford, Dr. Christina Blasey Ford. And yet they were not even the audacity, the imaginated goal to bring that up.
Yeah.
And yet here's a judge, who she's not the one who's accused of this crime. They're trying to question whether or not, did she give him a long enough sentence?
Yeah.
It's like, dude, the guy that you guys just, shoved in there at the end of Trump's, era was literally convicted himself, accused himself of attempted sexual assault.
It's
a president with 22 women, and we're not even supposed to bring that up.
Well, okay. Well, yeah, I could go in a million directions with this. So it's just, she handled it with class. She handled it with grace. There were a couple times where you could tell she's getting frustrated like any other person would when you're getting rapid fire, these stupid, silly questions. And one thing that really, really got to me is, she, in these proceedings, she had a moment where she thought to herself, do I really want this life? Do I really want to do this? If this is how our American politics are, if this is how our country is ran these days, is this something that I really even want to take on and bring my family into? But then, just like she is, the classy woman that she is, she took some time and she regrouped herself and she kept going on. Now, she is an African-American woman, so you might have got some of those little looks like the audacity of these guys asking me these questions, right? And those are the clips that Fox News will air. Is her just like being like, oh my God, you know what I mean? But putting their records up against Amy Coney Barrett, Brett Kavanaugh, like all these two judges alone that were just rushed through the process. I mean, she's done way more than these guys have. Yeah. It's just crazy. Oh, and then I don't know if you saw that one clip of Ted Cruz asking her about our baby's racist, and then they did another clip of him asking Amy Coney Barrett, like, do you like volleyball or something like that? And it was just so hypocritical. It was amazing.
Yeah, and we'll show you the video of Yash Raleigh and his questioning right now.
United States versus Hawkins. This was a child pornography case where the defendant distributed multiple images of child porn, possessed dozens more, including videos. The federal sentencing guidelines recommended a sentence of 97 to 121 months in prison. Prosecutors recommended 24 months in prison. Judge Jackson gave the defendant 3 months in prison. United States versus Chazen. That case, the defendant possessed 48 files of child pornography. The federal guidelines recommended 78 to 97 months in prison. The prosecutor recommended the same. Judge Jackson sentenced him to 28 months. United States versus Cooper. There, the defendant possessed dozens of images of child pornography and distributed dozens of images of child pornography, possessed over 600. The federal guidelines recommended 151 to 188 months in prison. That's a long time. The prosecutor recommended 72 months. Judge Jackson gave the defendant 60 months, which was the lowest sentence permitted by the law. United States versus Down, that's a case where the defendant distributed 33 graphic images and videos of child sexual assault to an anonymous messaging app, unfortunately a practice that's becoming more common. The federal guidelines recommended 70 to 87 months in prison. The prosecutor recommended 70 months in prison. Judge Jackson sentenced him to only 60 months. Again, that's the lowest level that was permitted by law in that case. United States versus Stewart. The defendant there distributed scores of images of children suffering sexual abuse. The guidelines recommended 97 to 121 months in prison. The prosecutor recommended 97 months in prison. Judge Jackson gave him 57 months. In United States versus Sears, the defendant distributed over 100 videos of child pornography. The guidelines recommended 97 to 121 months in prison. The prosecutor recommended 97 months in prison. Judge Jackson gave him 71 months. In United States versus Savage, the defendant was convicted of traveling across state lines to engage in sexual intercourse with a child and also possess 6 separate thumb drives of child pornography. The guidelines recommended 46 to 57 months in prison. The prosecutor recommended 49 months in prison. Judge Jackson sentenced him to 37 months in prison. Now, those are 7 cases that represent, as near as we can tell, all of Judge Jackson's cases dealing with child pornography from her time on the district court, in which she had some discretion to hand down a sentence. There's some other cases in which she didn't have any discretion. The law bound the sentence that she had to give. And what concerns me, and I've been very candid about this, is that in every case, in each of these 7, Judge Jackson handed down a lenient sentence that was below what the federal guidelines recommended and below what prosecutors requested. And so I think there's a lot to talk about there, and I look forward to talking about it. Now, I will note that some have said that the federal sentencing guidelines are too harsh on child sex crimes, especially child pornography. I've heard that argument a lot in recent days. The chairman quoted someone earlier today who takes that point of view. I'll just be honest, I can't say that I agree with that. I mean, the amount of child pornography in circulation has absolutely exploded in recent years. Here's a New York Times report from 2019. I'm quoting now. Last year, tech companies reported over 45 million online photos and videos of children being sexually abused, more than double what they found the previous year. The report goes on to say this: 20 years ago, these online images were a problem. 10 years ago, they were an epidemic. Now the crisis is at a breaking point. Unfortunately, it's even worse than that. Just last week, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children reported finding 85 million files of child pornography in 2021. And of course, this committee has heard testimony from prosecutors and others who are grappling with the problem of how to get at this porn and those who distribute it, how to prosecute them and hold them accountable. Here's my point. I think it's difficult against this backdrop to argue that the sentencing guidelines are too harsh or outmoded, or that we should be somehow treating child porn offenders more leniently than the guidelines recommend. But I want to be clear about this, that those arguments that I've just been rehearsing, those who say that, that's not what Judge Jackson has said. She hasn't had the chance yet to respond to this, and she deserves that chance. So others have made these arguments. I don't agree with them, but I think it's important we hear from Judge Jackson, and we'll have the chance to in coming days. And I think, again, the candor that Judge Jackson has shown previously, I look forward to, and she deserves the ability to speak for herself on this issue. So I will just say in closing, Mr. Chairman, some have asked, why did I raise these questions ahead of the hearing? Why not wait until the hearing and spring them on Judge Jackson, as it were? And my answer to that is very simple. I'm not interested in trapping Judge Jackson. I'm not interested in trying to play gotcha. I'm interested in her answers, because I found in our time together that she was enormously thoughtful, enormously accomplished, and I suspect has a coherent view, an explanation, and a set of way of thinking about this that I look forward to hearing. And I think she deserves the chance to talk about it. I think the American people deserve the chance to hear her answers. So they're my concerns, Judge. They're the cases. I imagine there'll be others that we can talk about.
So you guys can see that, like we said, I mean, it's just, this shit is just so like hypocritical, and it shows you their true, like, their true views. You know, and like I said, we talked about the Ted Cruz videos. You know, we want to be able to show you guys those as well too. We'll get to those here in a second. But yeah, it's just wild to me that they can have this complete hypocrisy, and there's nothing being said.
Unbelievable.
You know, as far as like, yeah, it blows my mind how they can.
I just don't understand what they're doing, and I don't understand, like, and I'll have to look this up because I don't know when Ted Cruz's term's up, but they were saying that essentially what he was doing is he was trying to get bits for his 2024 run.
Yeah.
But it's just like, is this dude really crazy? Because DeSantis is gonna kill his ass, and then Trump is going to be the nominee. Like, why don't they just do the work? They'll never be president.
Yeah.
They're never, you know, hopefully we'll never get another term in Congress. So just do the work, man.
Well,
like, this is just crazy.
And that's why, is because they want a name for themselves. I mean, it's, not to tangent, but it's the same reason why, like, Marjorie Taylor Greene does all this, like, crazy antics, and she'll, like, one of the things she did where she was literally talking shit about how, like, oh, we spend so much money in war, blah blah blah, and she was tweeting this. She tweeted this out the day before she tweeted that out. She actually bought like a lot of stock in Lockheed Martin, and it's kind of like, bitch, you're helping buying stock in the people that make these war machines. You turn around, but it just shows you like where their true minds go.
Here's the thing, though, is like the TV that their base, they're not seeing those things, right? So it won't be reported that Marjorie Taylor Greene bought like a whole bunch of stock in Lockheed Martin. Like, they don't see that stuff. And it's sad. It's like really sad that people really actually think that Marjorie is genuine. And like, number one, Josh Hawley, Josh Hawley. He should have never been like walked right. He should have never been let back into the Capitol. It's just insane.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that I think that we gotta really try to do our best to point those out. Before we get to the next one, or before we really talk about anything else, let us show you this video really quick of Ted Cruz's ass doing his stupidity. But we'll show that to you right now.
They include a book called Anti-Racist Baby by Ibram Kendi. And there are portions of this book that I find really quite remarkable. One portion of the book says babies are taught to be racist or anti-racist. There is no neutrality. Another portion of the book, they recommend to babies confess when being racist. Now, this is a book that is taught at Georgetown Day School to students in pre-K through second grade, so 4 through 7 years old. Do you agree with this book that is being taught with kids that babies are racist?
Senator, I do not believe that any child should be made to feel as though they are racist, or though they are not valued, or though they are less than, that they are victims, that they are oppressors. I don't believe in any of that. But what I will say is that when you asked me whether or not this was taught in schools, critical race theory, my understanding is that critical race theory as an academic theory is taught in law schools. And to the extent that you were asking the question, I understood you to be addressing public schools. Georgetown Day School, just like the religious school that Justice Barrett was on the board of, is a private school.
Okay, so you agree critical race theory is taught at Georgetown Day School?
I don't know, because the board is not, the board does not control the curriculum. The board does not focus on that. That's not what we do as board members. So I'm actually not sure.
Well, and I'll know.
Okay. So now that you guys have saw that video, you can just see how he's being all boisterous and trying to, make these like, and I can't believe that, it is such theatrics, and that's all it really is. And I'm not saying that there's not people that don't do that on the left. We talk about them all the time. Nancy Pelosi is very theatrical. I mean, this is what a lot of people do, but in order for, these things to change, right? You guys on the perceivable right, you guys that are the conservatives, also have to start calling out your own people. And those on the left, I say the same thing to them. Hey, when you see somebody doing clownish shit, right? Like buying stock and stuff, and then deliberately going and voting in that company's interest or that industry's interest.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we have to call that out. And if we just continue to just
it's never gonna happen, bro.
I mean,
not as long as I'm alive. We're so no, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I have hope.
I have hope too. I wouldn't be doing this podcast if I didn't have hope. I wish that at some point we all look at what's going on in Washington, right? I can say this until I'm blue in the face, but it is if we keep electing people even like you said, on the
Yeah.
left, if we keep electing these people that would rather be in front of TV
Yeah.
than actually doing the people's work,
Or using their
then
power for corruption. I mean,
yeah,
like, right?
yeah,
Like
exactly.
knowing that they're going to give like DuPont a big, huge
Mhm.
government contract to produce PPE, you know what I mean? And then turn around and they bought a bunch, you know, having their spouses buy, you know, stock, in those companies, right? Like, you know, that's something that's just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
And that was like what, like 3 Republicans and 2 Democrats that got caught doing that.
Yeah, I
You know what
mean,
like so.
and even though like
Yeah.
so we have the audacity to talk about corrupt countries.
Yeah.
Like as Americans, we always say that. Even I'll go to a party or whatever, I'll go to the bar, and they're
Yeah.
like, "That country's so corrupt."
It's like, but
Hello?
that's what we have a
Yeah,
major
yeah.
problem with that.
Hello, like we're just as corrupt. We're probably one of the top 5 corrupt.
I mean, think
most
about
corrupt
where
countries in the world.
corrupt criminals would want to go, right? So, one of my clients, I got a bunch of Indian clients, but one of them I was talking about this, you know, this is probably about a year ago, maybe even 2. But anyway, he was telling me how, you know, how corrupt India is, and
Right.
and he said it's, you know, stuff that's almost like right out in the open. And I was like, well, see, our people here do it in back rooms, right? They do it like these politicians do that with, you know, behind the scenes, so to speak. And I explained to him, I said, think about where, you know, criminals and corrupt type people would want to be. They're going to want to be in the biggest markets in the world. So yeah, where you have massive money, America, China, India, right? Like these massive, economies,
Yeah.
you're going to have a ton of
Don't-
corruption
don't
because
fool
we don't,
yourself.
we don't call it out.
Yeah,
And,
I
you know,
mean, and some of the biggest Ponzi schemes ever have
Yeah.
originated out of, you know, America. So
oh yeah.
it's just that have impacted the world.
And I think that's why we should have a lot different of a system set up. Like, so Supreme Courts, to me, like Supreme Court justices, first and foremost, I think should have a term. I just like I do with I think any politician.
Congress,
I've
yeah.
said this many times, so this is not just because of, you know, Kanji or from Brett Kavanaugh or Amy Coney Barrett or whatever, right? I think this is something that we should have systems in place where there's term limits where they cannot continue to run, you know, for that, especially like I know we do for president, all that, but Congress, Senate, whatever, but also with the Supreme Court. And I also think that we should only have one term for anybody anyways. Should have to go and like, you go from senator to Congress or Congress to Senate, sure. But then after that, it's like, hey, there's your 4 years. That's it. You gotta go find something else to do.
I think you make a great point. I mean, there are term limits for the president for a reason.
Yeah.
Right. And if you apply that same thought process to anyone in Congress or the Senate,
judicial
like,
system,
the judicial set, like that needs to be implemented sooner than later.
Pay them, you know.
And that's one thing I agree.
Maybe
with
we
Trump
need to pay them, you know, pay them more money and really, you know, handcuff them. Like, hey, you don't get to, you know, do any kind of trading. You don't get your spouses. If we find any way that you're using a cousin, anything like that, you know, there'll
be consequences.
Well, you're removed. You're removed right away.
Yeah, your job is to take care of the people's business, not to become millionaires, which they are.
Yep.
And then you have these freshman senators or whatever, you know, making $174,000 a year, and then 2 years later they're worth like $5 or $15 million. It's just like, you know what I mean? Like,
I think they make like 270. I think it's like 270. But anyway, like maybe pay them more. You know what I mean? And say, hey, but you got 4 years. That's it. Like I said, you could go from Congress and then, hey, there's your 4-year term. And if you get elected to the Senate, okay, there's your 4 years in the Senate. You get elected to the presidency. Hey, guess what? You go to being a president.
You got 8
hey,
years,
that's
4
it.
4 years, that's it.
You know?
You're done.
Well, then, but it's like, but you can go like Congress to Senate to president. You can go back and be mayor of your, to be governor. But you cannot stay in something, you know, and I know we have term limits for those things, but not for Senate and Congress or Supreme Court.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, like, even as a governor, all of them, I just think it should be like 4 years, get them in, get them out. I also don't think we should even, you know, I mean, not to kind of talk in circles, but I don't even think we should have, quite honestly, like Washington, period. I really think that we should have a system where we vote on everything, where we have, you know, whatever party's polling 10%, you can, you know, something like that, and say, hey, your party gets to put up, your top 10 things that you guys vote on within your own party, and every November 2nd or whatever, every 4 years, right? We all vote on those things. That'd be great.
Yeah, I mean,
and then we have a community.
There's too many people. I mean, like, yeah, I mean, I could see that working if there was actually term limits in place.
Yeah.
But if that ever, we're so far away from something like that, it's insane. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, and but I think that there's a side of me that thinks that we're closer to something being, whether that's good or bad. I think we're a lot closer to some sort of revolution, one way or the other. I think we have, we see this kind of stuff. It is so polarized. You can, if you talk to somebody who watches Fox News every night, they're going to sit there and try to tell you about how, Kanji, and oh my God, can you believe that she didn't put this person in prison for the rest of their life and blah, 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 blah. And you're like, well, we imprison more people than anywhere on the planet, not per capita, not per capita. We have more people in prison than anybody on the planet.
Well, because,
mind you, China and India have 1.3 plus billion people. Yeah. We talk about how authoritarian China is and that they'll just imprison people for anything. We have 1 billion less people, and we imprison more people than China does.
Yeah, because we made it a business.
It is a business.
That's exactly.
And so then you're going to go after a judge, right? Who, in my view, maybe she looked at this still young person, barely adult, which I don't even think 18 should be considered an adult. Your brain's not developed in. I think maybe 21 should be more when we start considering kids, people adults. Doesn't mean they can't have certain freedoms at 18. Maybe it's some, no curfew and cool. Doesn't mean they can't still go to a club at 18. But like entering in contracts and going to fight in wars. I mean, dude, your brain is not developed. And they're attacking this judge for likely, again, I'm not in her head, but she clearly saw a young person who was still trying to establish like his own, mindsets of, because many of these kids, and again, I'm not trying to defend this person at all. The research I've done on it, some of these things were like, a girl or a boy who were like in a soccer uniform and they were 14 or 13. It's like, okay, well, a year ago, that kid, or however old he was when this happened, within the last 365 days of his life, that was allowed.
Right.
So like, you're all of a sudden going like, oh my God,
I'm with you. Yeah. No,
At 17, you can consent, and in fact, I think Colorado's 16.
It's 16 in Colorado.
Many states are 16 or 17 years old.
I like where you're going with that.
Yeah.
However, again,
with an adult.
This is the thing, though. So I'll keep saying it. So like, I'll keep saying it. They did not present those facts.
Yeah.
Right. So they talked about this 18-year-old man. This 18-year-old man. Obviously, Wes and I are against child pornography. We're against,
of course,
child rape. We're against all of that stuff. But in certain situations where that person was 17, you know what I mean, and it was totally acceptable when he was at 17, right? And when you turn 18,
364 days, and the next day all of a sudden he's not allowed. Like it's like
anyone can sit here and say, and I don't know the facts on this case, so I won't speak anymore.
And neither did they, because because the facts in the case were, since it was a child case, it's going to be sealed. So they're just bringing up bullshit.
My thing is why even go there? Like, why even go there, right? So, and the other thing is like they wouldn't even let her argue the point. Like they wouldn't even let her argue how she got to that conclusion. So they're asking questions in which they won't let her answer.
They don't want the answer. They just want to have something, like you said, for their campaign.
For their campaigns.
They don't care about sexual assault. I mean, how many of them?
Right
now.
But Josh Hawley stuck up against
Josh Hawley. I mean, right now, how many people in like the last decade of our life that have talked about, how could somebody do these things, and the next thing you know, it comes out like they're homosexual and they're meeting dudes at like the Minnesota airport. They're in like a swingers thing, right? Like they're doing, and again, I don't care about that stuff. That's their fucking right. That's their business, But you got people you know, flying girls out of Florida, you know, paying their homeboy off of Venmo, who's now like literally, you know, said, hey, yeah,
He did
fucking
that.
Matt Gaetz I was absolutely bringing in, you know, young girls who that's where the crime was, because in Florida, I believe it's 17 for consent, but the crime was transferring across state lines.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they don't care about actual, you know, and that's a grown man.
And they've never talked about it either. They won't say a word about it because
he's
he's
like
in bed
I
with
think
Trump.
he's like 38,
Yeah,
39. I mean, like that's
gross.
I mean, again, like, you know, that's consent, right? She's 17. Some of these girls are all like, but the point being is they don't care about, you know, the optics of it. They don't care about you know, about what they're doing. It's like they only want to care because, again,
so let me ask,
to them having a black woman
yeah.
on the Supreme Court is like they've got to figure out, and she's, you know, a leftist, like they're gonna try to dig into, and I mean, you know, I get that, that's what they all do, but like dig into things that and have some substance to it.
So let me ask you this question: why can't she say something like that? Like, you didn't care about Matt Gaetz?
Yeah.
Like, why
because then
is it just not appropriate?
Yeah, because like the moment that like somebody on the left says something wild and crazy, they immediately start screaming and yelling like, "Oh, you see how like when they want to bring up this and that, and bring up all like politically correct," and it's like, but then when they do it, it's like,
if I was sitting in that chair, I'd be like, "Oh, please."
Yeah.
That's exactly what I would have said.
I've been like, yeah, like you guys ramp up this nonsense of your QAnon bullshit, and literally having people going to pizza parlors, you know, start shooting at just because they think there's some child sex ring, you know, some demon Democrats eating, and then that's where this comes from. I mean, Josh Raleigh, always like this, you know what I mean? Like he's somebody who's promoted a bunch of QAnon shit.
I would, you know? If you guys have a moment, like go on YouTube, because I was on YouTube on Friday, I believe, and I searched some QAnon stuff. Man, my goodness, are people sick out there?
You got like upwards of about 20 some million people that I mean, openly say that they believe in that they legitimately think that they believe that there's this like
and there's no
underground demon sex ring that's only Democrats, but it's like, okay, well, I can give you, you know, a half a dozen names of Republicans in the last, you know,
that have done
10 years that have been like, I mean, and it's like they don't want to talk about that, and it's like, and I'm fine with talking about both ways. It's like, you know, but find me those names, like find me the names, like, okay, cool, like, okay, like Harvey, okay, cool, yep, agreed. Yep, what a piece of shit. But like when you tell them their name, you know, somebody on the right, they're like, no, I mean, here, dude, the thing is about that. It's like, no, dude, y'all are clowns.
It
like,
is what it is.
I can openly say that, like, oh, this person, oh yeah, he's a pile of shit for what he did.
Yeah.
Right? No matter who it is.
Yeah.
And it always seems to be where I talk with those groups of people, and they just kind of like, if it's one of their, you know, put here by Jesus, you know, can't ever do anything wrong, you know, superheroes, right? They're like, oh no, not that person. Nope. That was all bullshit. It's like, dude, there's multiple accounts of it. Nope, don't believe it. And you're like, well, my cousin's friend told me that they saw, you know, Joe Schmo, who was a lefty, you know, rubbing a lady's shoulder. And you're like, well, dude, we don't have, that sounds like bullshit. They're like, no, I believe every word of that. It's like, dude, but you don't believe like multiple women who've like literally like gone on record. They've, you know, I mean, we have payments to you know, to women that, we have lawyers who said that this is what Trump did.
So,
and yet they don't want that. That is like,
I do remember myself
I
do remember myself just getting so mad about that, because like I would have facts, and then my friends on the right would just, my cousin's uncle.
Yeah.
And they, you know what I mean?
They
it's
buy
just
into
like, whatever.
And this is why we're in this situation, because, you know, this again, and I think the way to solve that would be to allow us to vote on Supreme Court judges.
Yeah.
And you know, and people are like, oh well, you know,
why don't we get that?
Because I think it's a system. Again, this is where our corruption is at. The people in power want, you know, like they say, power wants absolute power.
Yeah.
So they know if I put in, you know, the judges, especially when it gets to that level, the judges that are going to be on my side, right? Then when we go to do something corrupt, right, we're not going to be the ones, you know, towing that ball and chain, so to speak. Right. So that's where I think that comes from. And again, the whole point of a democracy, I mean, as I've said this many times before, a democracy is defined by the control of a group or organization by the majority of its members.
Yeah.
That's the definition of it. And, and that should be how that works, right? Like we have to have control over this as a society, is the people. That's the whole point. This is what the founding, this is the funny thing to me is like the founding fathers, right? That's what they love so much to talk about. Oh my gosh, like, the Constitution, like, good. Hey, listen, it was a cool document. They did some really good stuff. It's 250 fucking years old. We have to evolve from that a little bit because we can see the flaws in it, right? Like when no matter what it is, I mean, look at this is something I did in one of my videos with Lauren Boebert, like, right? She, sorry, I pronounced her name wrong. It's Lauren Boebert. Excuse me, Lauren Boebert. She, she literally said that, like, to change the Constitution or whatever, like, there should be no change to the Constitution because that'd be spitting in the founder's face. And it's like, bitch, literally, the Second Amendment that you so love is literally an amendment, you dumb idiot. Like, if we didn't change the Constitution, bitch, you wouldn't be allowed to be, like,
do you know what an amendment is?
Well, not only that, but like the Constitution also said that, like, as a woman, you didn't have a right to vote.
Right.
You also wouldn't ever be in your position as a Congress member. Right. Number one. Then you got Candace Owens, which I did a video on, where she's literally, bitching and complaining at CPAC recently about how the left has made the women get out of the kitchen, and that the bra burning generation and the liberals made them get out of the kitchen and so they can indoctrinate our kids. Oh, dude, guys, I released this video. Yeah, trust me.
Drop that.
She's talking about how, literally about how that that the left is just trying to indoctrinate the children, and that was the whole ploy, was to get the woman out of the kitchen so that way they could raise, so that the left only, right? Because they're the only ones that seem to like have all the school systems. I didn't know there wasn't any school systems in the right part of the country. But that was her whole, I mean, literally on stage at CPAC complaining. And I'm like, so wait a minute. So you're on
everybody's like,
yeah, you're on a stage because of the bra burning generation that started making, giving women the power to go out and get things like a position to be a grifter. Yeah. Like, so what do you want? Like, you're literally arguing for, so it should be like, bitch, get back in the kitchen and make me a sandwich. That's what you're arguing for, while on a stage with a whole position where you go on Fox News every day and have your whole little podcast. Like, the hypocrisy and the delusion, and the delusion of some of these people where you're like, dude, what the fuck? Again, like, what world are you guys living in?
Yeah, I mean, we could go on forever about this, guys, but we need to, we're going to switch gears a little bit. We got about 5 more minutes to talk about these rising gas prices and who's at fault, and is it the president's fault? Is it
obviously everything going on with Russia, Ukraine, you know what I mean? Like,
probably it is Biden's fault.
Yeah,
everything is Biden's fault.
Yeah,
everything.
I mean, the prices have gone up. I mean, our entire
it's crazy
lives
out there, man.
Well, I mean, they've been going up our entire lives. There's a lot of like supply chain issues. I mean, this is what people, again, they don't want to do. Even just critical thinking, like why are house prices skyrocketing? Why are car prices skyrocketing? Like, why are getting your goddamn decks skyrocketing? Right? Like, we've had supply chain issues because of COVID for the last 2+ years.
Oh, this one drives me crazy.
Nobody wants to understand that. Like, this is the residual effect of things not being manufactured, things not being delivered. We were going off of like, our supply, right? We're using up what we had saved.
Well, let's talk about,
we ran out
like,
of
in
supply.
terms of the gas prices, let's talk about these big multi-billion-dollar companies that just won't sell us the gas for cheaper. Yeah. Like, let's talk about
greed.
The greed on top of that, instead of helping the American people, they still want these profits. So that's, let's talk about like what's really going on, guys, instead of blaming one person. Now, I remember Trump.
Joe Biden's out there like stopping barges and being like, "Oh no!"
I'm just saying,
he's Poseidon. He's in the ocean. He's stopping.
That's what I say all the time. Do you think he wants this? Do you think that this is what he gets? And like, has all this shit going on that he wants to deal with inflation now? Like, it's just like, you guys do. We have
supply chain issues.
We can't
even get chips to go on these cars. Like, we have supply chain issues. I mean, it's causing a problem.
I'm so like, I have this argument at least 3 or 4 times a week, guys. Like, Joe Biden doesn't walk into the Oval Office and say, "Hey, I want everything to be just outpriced," right? Like, he has some control over whether or not he can get to his voice to these people, but ultimately it's these corporations that, have these outrageous, gas prices. It's just, I mean, am I crazy? Like,
no,
I feel like I'm going crazy talking about this.
No, and I think that's what they don't want to, again, like I said, you don't need to do all this research on gas and what's going on. And that I literally just gave you the examples. Like, we've have supply chain issues, and they're like, well, we need to start pumping gas. Like, okay, we can start trying to get oil here, but that's not something that just happens overnight.
Well, someone even talked to me about a pipeline that Joe stopped that wasn't even set up, wasn't even there.
Yeah, no, it's
okay. We're almost done.
Yeah. It depends on, what people want to really view, like what they're really wanting to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, they're going to have to understand that if they don't do the research on it, you know what I mean? They're not going to understand what's really going on. And they go and watch, Fox News, and all Fox News wants to say is like, I've seen them on there sitting there talking about like, oh, he doesn't want to drill here and do what? Again, these things take time. These are not something that you just can go, oh, hey, snap the finger. It's like, no. Now, again, should they start doing that? Yeah, I probably would agree with it. Like, maybe we should start doing that a little bit, so that way these things potentially we don't have as much of a problem with it. But by the time that fixes the problem, our supply chain issues might have already been corrected, because some of this stuff is happening quickly, right? This could be again, calm down. It's been a couple weeks,
and
deal with it. There's people that have.
If you're complaining about gas prices, you're just a broke bitch.
No, it sucks. And but I mean, again, but deal with it a little bit and figure out how to adapt, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of other things going on in the world that many other countries are, literally, like we talked about with Ukraine.
Dying.
I mean, you have multiple wars going on around the world. You have, genocides going around the world. You know what I mean? And we're complaining, again, just like what people are doing with COVID. They're like, oh my God, I can't go to the fucking, to get my this done and my hair cut. Like, it's like, dude, calm down, relax, take a second. Okay. Maybe put off driving across, I don't know, across country for a couple of weeks. Maybe tell yourself, hey, I'm going to take public transit. I mean, you know what I mean? Like,
think outside the box
adapt to it a little bit. It's not something that's going to be forever. Yeah, like
we're still in a pandemic, guys. Remember, COVID still exists,
and
stuff is jacked up.
Yeah, and it's not just gonna.
And it's not one person that's gonna.
Yeah, it's not gonna be like this for again. Now, if we're wrong about that, in 6 months from now, these prices are still outrageous like that, or even 3 months from now, fine, cool, come attack us for that.
I just think,
but I think it's something that's going to calm right back down.
It's people like Biden's pushing his liberal agenda for electric cars, and these are the crazy things that I hear. Like, you think he wants
those people are invested. Those, you could look at what they have. I mean, because of the positions that they have to disclose their financial statements. So you could literally look and see that they are invested in oil and gas left and right. All of them have stock in Shell, ExxonMobil, Chevron. This is not this is all this game. It's all theatrics. They want to sit there and act like, and I will tell you the same thing about fucking Sean Hannity and Laura Ingraham and Tucker Carlson, blah, 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 all the way down the line, fucking, Jesse Waters. I guarantee that they also have stock options in EV technology.
Look it up, guys.
Solar.
I encourage you to look it up.
Yeah,
I know he's right.
Well, those ones, like, you know, I mean, they're private people, so you
no,
know
I'm just saying, like Lori Ingram and all them. Like,
I bet you that they have
like I know
stock in Tesla. I guarantee they bought in stock in Tesla.
Yeah,
they bought in stock in, like, you know, in solar panels, you know, in different solar companies. I would bet you anything. And what they would do is say, "Oh, well, I didn't know that my broker did that."
Yeah, I can't.
Well, I mean, it's a good business. It's a good business, decision to have that. It's like just like we talked about Marjorie Taylor Greene and how she complains about how much money we spend at war. Yet that day is like the day before that she had to release her financial statements that she literally bought stock in Lockheed Martin. Wow. It's like you can't bitch about both. Like, you can't complain that we spend money on war.
Well, yeah, you can.
And then
you can bitch about it
because you're a liar.
blind.
If you're a grifter.
Yeah. If you're blind and you're not doing your research about it, like, yeah, you can grift.
I can't bitch about the drug problems that we have, and then find out that, like, I just gave El Chapo, or, well, I know he's in prison, but I'm like, I just gave, like, his son, or, you know, some huge drug cartel hundreds of thousands of dollars to produce said drug.
Right.
It's like, dude, bitch, like, you can't complain about both things. You can't be funding it on one end and then complain about it on the other end. And then when she got caught, literally her whole argument was like, well, I mean, it's a good decision to invest in these things. It's like, bitch, come on, dude.
Get out of here.
That's exactly what they do. And you're like, it's crazy, bro.
Anyways, thank you guys so much for sitting through this other episode with us. We've had a fun time with you today. Don't forget to like and subscribe on Instagram.
And share with your friends.
_idiots IG and Unfiltered Idiots podcast on YouTube and Facebook.
Everywhere podcasts are found.
And, you know, I'm going to keep on this guy to get his episodes released.
I need to release them.
Looking forward to seeing his views on things.
Yes.
At Unfiltered Metro.
Yes.
And Unfiltered Kenny.
Check out Unfiltered Kenny.
We love y'all. We love y'all. Take care. Bye.
Peace.